Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. We're excited to have over 350 registered attendees for today's webinar, which is for 1 credit from the ACI. But before we get started, we do want to give one lucky attendee a chance to win an ice cooler for answering this week's trivia question. The question is, today's sponsor, Sodexo Clinical Technology Management, is headquartered in Tennessee. What is the name of Elvis Presley's home located in Memphis, Tennessee? Answer now using the question feature on your dashboard. While you're answering, I do want to invite everyone to join us for the 4th Annual Imaging Conference and Expo, which will be held July 24 through 25 at Hyatt Regency Hotel near Washington, D.C. The ICE conference will bring 400 plus imaging service professionals from across the nation to Washington, D.C. for 2 days of learning, networking, and the latest advances in imaging. Registration is now open. You can attend this conference with a complimentary admission by using the VIP Pass Compliments of Sodexo, which can be found in your Webinar Wednesday workbook. If you did not receive this workbook, you can download a copy now on your dashboard in the Handouts section. To register or get more details on the conference, please visit attendice.com. All right, let's see who this week's winner is. The ice cooler will go to you, Brian Frank. Congratulations. The correct answer was Graceland. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, Sodexo Clinical Technology Management. Sodexo CTM delivers clinical engineering services to many of the nation's best hospitals. Their objective is simple: limit downtime so medical teams can deliver quality, life-saving services efficiently and economically. Visit SodexoCTM.com for more information on this company. Our presenter today is Dave Francoeur, Senior Director, Brand and Quality at Sodexo Clinical Technology Management. Dave has over 35 years of experience in the healthcare industry. And Dave, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Jamie. This is awesome. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, whatever the case may be, wherever you are in this wonderful country of ours. And thank you for participating. I want to take a couple minutes out. First of all, congratulations, Mr. Frank, and enjoy your cooler. I'm sure it'll be awesome. So we're going to take a couple seconds and just thank the MD Publishing Group, because they absolutely are tremendous in helping to promote and grow and bring a lot of value to us as a profession through the MD Expos and through the trade magazines that they create, through the ICE relationship, to the online support that they do. So we are all very fortunate for MD Publishing, and I thank them very much for this opportunity and for their continued support to the industry. So thanks again to the group. I also just want to take a couple seconds to talk about the title. The title to this presentation really was just a way, hopefully, to get you guys to think a little bit around what's going on in the industry from a resource perspective, and that I think we're in trouble as a profession around getting good qualified individuals. And so that's how I came up with the title, because I do believe at the rate we're going, there's more test equipment than there are qualified, good canned people to work on those pieces, with those pieces of equipment. So the objective for this conversation from my perspective would be to take a few minutes and help you guys understand kind of like where we are today, how did we get here, where do we want to go, and how are we going to get to where we want to be. And I hope that we can accomplish that in this next hour as we sit and have this discussion. It's a little bit of a challenge for me. I don't mind presenting, but normally I get to see some feedback from the audience, both with facial expressions or body language. So I'm going to just pretend like you're not all sleeping and you're listening and that you're interested in what we have to talk about. So let's give it a shot. A little bit about myself, just to kind of give you some feedback. As Jamie indicated, I've got a little over 35 years in healthcare, most of it in the HTM profession. I've worked in-house. I worked for an insurance organization. I worked for majority of the ISOs. And I've been a big supporter of the industry. I currently sit on the AMI board, was very instrumental in starting up the Technology Management Council. I chaired that for numerous years, as well as chairing the USCC. And again, I do this with the idea of trying to support it. I believe in this profession tremendously, and I think most of you that are on this call obviously have that same passion, or you wouldn't be trying to better yourself. So I commend and thank you for that. And hopefully we can all continue to grow together. So as we go down, I can tell you candidly, part of the reason why Sodexo asked specifically for this week to be able to do a presentation was so that we could take a couple minutes out as it was close in the calendar to what's actually going to be next week. And I'm sure everyone on this call knows about it, but I'd like to talk a little bit about it. And so, you know, from a healthcare technology perspective, there were 30 of us or so about 6 years ago that actually got together in the Washington area and sat around for 2 days. And I can tell you that one of the things in this industry is that people don't necessarily know what we do, how we do it, or why we do it. And, you know, at the time we talked a lot about, and I'm going to give an example, such as a nurse. So if I said nurse, I'm pretty sure there isn't anybody on this phone that wouldn't conjure up a picture and have a pretty good idea of what a nurse is. The fact is, you can be a nurse in ICU, in the ER, in NICU. It doesn't surgery. You could be a nurse anywhere, but when somebody says nurse, they have a pretty good idea what that means. Well, as we're going to get into this discussion down the road, that's not quite the way it is in our industry. Somebody could be a biomed, somebody could be a clinical engineer, somebody could be a repairman, whatever the case is. And so we wanted to come up with something that would conjure up a picture that everybody would understand and appreciate. So that's where the healthcare technology management came from. And so for that, I'd like to just take out a few minutes and thank Amy for helping making that happen. And I'd also ask that for those of you on the call, please take next week as an opportunity to, you know, educate your employers, help them understand what we're all about, what we do, thank your peers, thank your employees, take a few minutes and appreciate what we have. I mean, for us as a profession to get a week dedicated to us, you know that there's so many others in the industry that do this or in the world between nursing and everything else. It's a great opportunity for us, and I would encourage you to make sure that you take advantage of it and market it like crazy. So, for instance, the next thing here is, this is a proclamation that was actually created by AAMI. If you don't have access to this, you can go on the website or you can see it here, and it's actually an official document. We have an official week dedicated to our profession, and so for that, again, we all owe a vote of thank you to Amy for making that happen. And here's the proclamation, and it's pretty exciting, and you know, it's things that you should share with your family and your friends, and just brag about the industry. So some of the things that are going on and I think are important that you should be aware of and that we should be, you know, be proud of and give credit to the people that recognize that. Again, I want to go back to MD Publishing. John Craig and his team are phenomenal. They are extremely instrumental in us as a profession and supporting us. And so some of the things that they're doing, as you can see here, is under the MD Publishing header. You know, I think this is phenomenal. If you have somebody that's been instrumental in your growth and development and helping you be who you are, and that's somebody that you're proud of, and take advantage of that. Submit them and yourself as examples that can be held up in the industry as things that would be demonstrating the proof of what the value of the industry is. Submit that, and hopefully maybe you'll be one of the ones that wins and get recognition and credit for that. If you look down below, the MedWrench one, right? So they're looking for an individual that wants to talk about themselves and demonstrate how they've come from where they were to where they are and how they did that and the value of that. And another great opportunity to promote the industry and to grow individuals for themselves. And whether you win or not, it's not really relevant. It's really about the opportunity to be able to express your particular story, and hopefully it can be used to get more people encouraged. As we go through this conversation today, you're going to find out that we have a real need, and anything that we can do to grow that opportunity, expand on that opportunity, educate, it's important that we do that. So I would encourage you strongly to participate in whatever level that you can. So I guess I'm going to take a second out here and talk a little bit about what we're trying to achieve. So for the purpose of this presentation, and I think it's a fairly accurate representation in general, is really where we're talking around engineers and engineering technicians, right? So Engineers are typically known as the individuals who do the research and development. They get into the design and the construction of the specific pieces of equipment. And I think that's imperative. Without these individuals, we wouldn't have healthcare. We wouldn't be able to improve healthcare, the lives of people through healthcare. And so it's absolutely imperative that we have these individuals. But what's also important is that we have the engineering technicians who actually do the implementation, the repair and maintenance. And they also work side by side with the engineering groups to make sure that the devices that are designed can actually work in today's environment, actually do what they're supposed to do. So they work hand in hand, and regardless of what aspect that you're in this industry, you play a vital role. It's extremely important that the position exists and that you contribute to it the best that you possibly can. So it's extremely important. And so I just wanted to, for the sake of our discussion today, it's really focused around these two primary areas. So I'm going to take a couple minutes out and just talk a little bit about, for those that may or may not even know about it, a little bit about how we got here, right? So the earliest thing that people can recollect is back in 1791, as you can see, right? And as you can see, there's a bunch of them. I'll leave it up for a couple seconds, but you can see there's a bunch of examples of different things that have happened throughout industry, throughout our life, way before our lives. But as you can see back in history, again, starting in 1791, you can see examples of where devices or systems have been implemented and created to improve the quality of healthcare, to improve the way that we deliver healthcare. And throughout that process, whether they were known or not to be biomedical engineers or clinical engineers or healthcare technology management individuals, we've played a vital and key role in that process. And so it's just interesting to see how this has all come about and some of the things that have happened. I mean, 1881, the blood pressure, right? I mean, way back when, for those of us that are older, I mean, that used to actually be mercury. Then we found out that mercury wasn't safe. But the point is that it's interesting how that all works and how we got to where we are today. A couple more examples. So obviously, if you think back, you know, you talk about blood, the blood bank perspective, and without that, you know, a lot of people's lives wouldn't have been able to have been saved because couldn't do the transfusions or infusions from accidents or whatever the case may be. Look at the penicillin and the antibiotics so that we could prevent infections and all the value associated with all that. It's been phenomenal. A couple more examples. Very, very cool stuff. I mean, again, all things that have been around our having played a key role, our ancestors playing a key role in the design and development associated with medical equipment. Interesting note on this particular slide is, so in this situation, they're saying that there's approximately 32,000 individuals that are in this field and industry. You'll find out as we go through this presentation that, in fact, there's varying opinions as to exactly how many there are or are not. And so we'll talk about that. So this particular slide for me is kind of a, I don't know, I guess I'd call it the beginning, if you will. So for those of us in this era, in this generation, we have known the inception of the healthcare technology management space as having been born out of, created out of the Ralph Nader era. Some of you may know of this and some may not, so it may be a kind of a cute little story as to how it all come about. So back in 1970, April 24th, Ralph Nader, reporting journalist, put into the magazine that there were over 5,000 people that were dying from microshock. I know we all know what that is, so I'm not going to get into explaining that. But essentially, from leakage of medical devices, people were dying. And so a lot of us feel that that was truly the inception around clinical engineering or healthcare technology management, and for us to, from the inception and the growth around how we got here. So what's interesting is it kind of starts out from, we started out with medical equipment repair person, right? And so for those of us that have been around, we actually started up and reported to and within the maintenance department. So while there were electricians, while there were carpenters and painters and groundskeepers, there was also this thing called a medical equipment repairman. We actually had the ability back then to actually do preventive maintenance. There were mechanical aspects to a lot of medical equipment that actually needed grease or pinch valves or pneumatic tubing or whatever the case may be. And so we actually could have an impact, and we actually at that time could actually prevent things from occurring. So it was pretty exciting. We wanted to establish ourselves to be a little more than just a repair person, and so somehow we evolved to something called the Bio-Medical Technology Group. We were a group of individuals that basically supported medical equipment. We did it at a little higher volume. We did it a little bit more care. Technology was starting to evolve a little bit more, and we played a different role, and we got involved at a little higher level. A couple years later, we got into removing the hyphen because it came as a misnomer, or a lot of times it was in the bio waste or bio this, and so we wanted to again delineate ourselves a little bit differently, wanted a little bit more notoriety, a little more fame, and so we called it straight biomedical engineering and moved from the technology side to the engineering side, because earlier on in the pioneering days, long before all the regulatory requirements, we actually could have an impact around changing anesthesia devices in the field or somewhat modifying some of the medical equipment so that the doctors who were state-of-the-art, leading-edge people that use the technology could actually try different aspects. And so we played a side-by-side role with the clinical staff and the physicians, and actually had an impact and changed a lot of cool things about it. So I can remember the next phase even more so. I actually remember back in the days in the early 90s, and so all of a sudden we were like, you know what, we need to take this to the next level. We need to bump up our visibility, and we need to make sure that people recognize us for the value that we bring in the things that we do. And we said, we're going to put on ties, and we're going to become clinical engineers, and we're going to demonstrate to the world that we're doing things in a much higher level and bringing a lot more value. And it's been a good and a bad thing for us, because actually to be a clinical engineer, you actually have to be degreed. And a lot of times we call our departments clinical engineering, or we call ourselves clinical engineers, but technically we're not degreed engineers, or at least not all of us. And so it's created a little bit of a rub, but the important thing, or the piece to take away from it, was it really was around getting some credibility, staking a claim in the healthcare industry, and starting to demonstrate the value that we had, and being able to have an impact on the care of patients and the equipment that was being used on the patients. So throughout this process, whether you agree or don't agree with the nomenclature and the titles, it's really irrelevant. It's really around we as an industry trying to improve what we do, how we do it, and the way we do it to bring credibility to our profession. So I've been very pleased and proud to be part of that whole process. The final one, which I guess I didn't put on and should have, would be to get to the HTM moniker where we are today, which again is about 6 years old. So I think something that I want to bring up here is that, as I described earlier in the definition, whether you're an engineer or you're an engineering technologist, technician, it's really about, what do you do and how can you contribute and what areas of opportunity are there in space. And so here's just a couple examples of all things that you can participate in this space. And so it's not just relegated to break fix. It's not just necessarily relegated to research and design. So lots of things that are out there, lots of opportunity, and I would just say that, take advantage of that opportunity and, make sure that you participate wherever possible. So again, I think it's a really good opportunity for where we're at and what we do. All right, so I'm going to pause for a second, and I'm going to talk about current state, because this is really the focus around what we want to do, or what I wanted to convey today. I think we're at a critical junction in our profession and our industry. And again, I want to commend all of you that are on this call, because to me that demonstrates that you take an interest in your profession, you take an interest in your career, and you have a desire to want to be good at what you do, And I would just ask, if you're not already, I would then ask that we take this to the next level and try to roll this out to others. So what I hope to do over the next couple of slides is kind of give you a state of the union, where are we at today, and where the opportunities might be for us to go in the next phase. So according to the U.S. Department of Labor, and again, I told you, depending on who you ask, there's all different opinions about how many individuals there are. In their case, they say there's 48,000 people that do what we do. And you can see the breakdown as they attribute it to specifically those 48,000 people, right? And so, again, depending on how you define it, depending on what you do, you're going to fall into what I would say is probably, well, it could be any one of these things, but for most of us, we're probably in the 19 or the 13%, right? So it's around the precision repair and maintenance or around the hospitals situation. So, again, it is what it is. But it's just kind of a little breakdown. I figured it'd be interesting to show you that and how it works. But at this point, I'm comfortable with somewhere between, let's say, 35,000 and 45,000 for sure is probably where we're at in terms of individuals that play a role in this industry as it relates specifically to medical equipment, right? And so for that, and from my perspective, that's really around so manufacturing, it's in-house programs, it's an ISO, or it's a third party where it's a special niche specifically related to a specific piece of equipment. All of those play part and parcel into the aggregate of our organization, but I think, again, they've broken it out in these pieces, all of which could be rolled out in one fashion or another of these 48,000. So this slide, the reason I threw this in is I find it interesting. So for the purposes of our discussion, or what I want to talk about right now, really is around the engineers and technologists, and the managers. And we can lump in others because technically we don't know what others is. And one of the things that I want to do right now is to take a couple minutes and discuss the fact that one of the problems that we have in our industry, or the opportunities is a word, I don't like to use the word problems, but one of the opportunities that I think we have is that if for instance, there's 200 people on this call, let's just say. If I ask 200 people, what it is that we do, how do we do it, what are we called, I'd probably get 150 different answers. And part of the process behind the HTM was to start streamlining that, making it more standardized and consistent. And so we're still struggling with that, which I think is one of the reasons why we're having difficulty in promoting and getting people in this industry. All that being said, I want to point out something through this slide. If you look at this slide, you'll see that if you look at the engineers and technologists and the managers, there's a significant number of individuals that are growing older in our profession, and that they're really setting themselves up after very successful careers towards working towards retirement that they so justly deserve, which I hope to achieve at some point. But if you look at engineers, managers, and others, that's where we're leaning. I mean, if you look at others in particular, there's a very slighted scale, if you will, associated with working towards retirement. So if you take the 45 to 54 and 55 to 64, it's a significant, better than half of the people are migrating towards retirement, and we're going to need to fill those positions. As we get through the slides, we go through more slides, you're going to see that it's actually, there's more to this than even meets the eye. But I thought that this slide in particular was very telling and somewhat concerning for me, as it should be for you, because regardless of whether you're someone that's servicing medical equipment, managing people that service medical equipment, involved with research and design, it takes individuals to get this profession to be successful, to get the work to be done, and we're going to need individuals to do that. So as we go further through slides, I'll be able to show you a little bit more around that. So here's some data for you, right? So Amy did a 2015 employment survey. 41% of the respondents were over the 55 years of age. So that's telling. That's a concern. No doubt about it. 24/7, they did a report. You can see what's interesting on this slide to me is the way they went about it. It actually could be misunderstood Because if you look quick, it's like, oh, 18% is between 30 and 39 and 25% between 20 and 29. That's not the case. If you look closer, it's actually 18%. If you make the assumption that people got into this profession at 20 years old, then essentially at the 18%, they're between 50 and 60 years old. And if you did the same thing at 20 years old, you're actually between 40 and 50. The reality of it is that most people don't get into this at 20 years old. And in fact, a large majority of the people that get into this industry actually come from a change in career, which means they're later in life. And so all that being said is, again, this just helps support the slide 2 slides ago, which simply says, you know, we're getting older. I mean, that's all there is to it. So switching gears just a little bit, let's go back to a little bit about what we got going on, right? So this is a list. It's not 100% inclusive, but it's probably 90%. Almost all the institutions that are out there are up here on the board. All great institutions, great educational opportunities. But the fact of the matter is that this is all of them. And if you look at this as an aggregate, you will find out that in theory, we're averaging 300 students a year is what we are graduating into this profession. Let me say that number again, 300. In a couple minutes, you'll see what that equates to. But as you can see, these are the schools, and they equate to 300 graduates a year. I think the piece that I want to point out here is, and this is going to tie back, I'll tie it back again later, but if you look at this and you look at the geographic region of where they are, you know, you got your Texas, you got Indiana, Pennsylvania, you know, they're scattered throughout the United States, and that's great. But when you think about it, you know, you're looking at very small pockets of the entire United States represented by a large percentage of the overall educational institutions that are out there. So it's, again, I'm going to tie this back, but you'll see 300 graduates a year, that's not a lot. So I'm going to take a second here, and this is a very conservative model. I'm telling you it's conservative because there are more than 3,000 hospitals in the United States. If you just did that based on 3,000 hospitals, and you did it as on an average, there's 3 techs per hospital, and there's actually more than that. And if you look at it, and I told you actually, you could actually say there's 40-some-odd thousand people in this industry. But irrespective of that, if you look at it as 1/3 are retiring, which is what we've talked about, you're looking at about 1,000 people a year retiring. So over the course of 5 years, you're looking at 5,000 people plus retiring. If you go back to the slide that I showed you a few minutes ago, and you look at there's 30 open programs or so, and each one of them on average graduating 10 per year, total of 300, over 5 years is 1,500. You look at the last line, a delta is we're short by about 3,500. I'm pretty sure if I could do a poll across everybody on this call, we're having challenges with getting enough people to fill the open slots that we have. I know that to be a fact amongst all my competitors and peers. I've known that to be my case almost my entire career. It's hard to find individuals, with the exception of very close proximity to where those schools are geographically, as we discussed. But this slide's a little scary if you look at it. And, you know, again, a little bit more as we go around just how scary it really is. So here's a slide that basically comes from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? So this is a study that they did. It was a 190-some-odd page study that I read the whole thing, and it's really, really difficult to understand and challenging because, as I said earlier, one of the things that they do is they call it engineering and engineering technologies, and they lump it all together, and they do not break out specifically as it relates to healthcare, all of which we're attributed and tied to specifically, right? So it's a concern because we don't really have a clear delineation, and it's not really clear, cut, and dry, so we don't know exactly how to attack it or exactly how to manage these numbers. But the point is, if you look at this, and I do believe this is so, they're basically saying that the study that they did in 2014, rolling it out to 2024, that there's going to be a 6% increase in the installation, maintenance, and repair of medical equipment. So just think back to the slide I showed you a few minutes ago. We got a deficit in the next 5 years of about 3,500 openings, and that does not include the 6% increase that the government is saying that we're going to have. You guys starting to see the picture I'm trying to paint? Not very pretty. All right, let's talk a little bit about the future, because this is really where our opportunity is. Again, I commend and appreciate the fact that you're all on the call, which says that you're interested and you want to do something about it, or you just want to get your credentials, keep your certificate. Either way, that's fine. Anyway, so the future. Here's the sad truth. I showed you the slide earlier around the schools and the fact that we're graduating about 300 people. A little known fact, these particular 24 organizations are actually going to suspend, cancel, terminate their programs. That is going to have an additional negative impact on our programs. I will say and put a plug in for Ms. Jewel Newell, who I know is on the phone. She's going to try to open a school down in Texas, so I commend her for that effort, and I hope she's very successful. But the point is, there are not a lot of opportunities, and they're becoming less. And so that's a concern for me. There will be, at this year's AMI conference, a major opportunity for a symposium to talk about education, what's going on, what do we need to do different. There'll be some very predominant people in the room having a real good dialogue. And what we hope is that the MD publishing groups and the AMIs of the world and others will get behind this and spearhead it and see if we can't figure out a way to build and grow institutional programs that will be successful. So this is my thoughts around this whole conversation, right? It's around our challenges. And so what I want to do is take a second and just go through each one of these. Again, this is my perspective. Let's be clear about that. But I think the value associated with this for us to have a discussion around what that looks like, right? So I'll take population. Population for me means right now we're in the baby boomer era, right? So there's more people in this generation that's getting older that's going to need health care, more health care. And so the fact is the patient volumes are going to increase just because there's more people at the age of healthcare needs that the number is growing. That's just a fact. Workforce. I showed you earlier, 40 to 50% of the workforce will be retiring within the next 5 to 7 years. The demand for resources is growing. I told you that the federal government did a research, and up to the year 2024, there's going to be a 6% increase in need for individuals to be able to support this industry. So we got negative, negative, positive that's actually a negative because we need more. A negative, schools are closing. 24 schools within the next 18 to 24 months will be closing. Our enrollment is already down, and it continues to go down. I want to talk a little bit about that for a second because I think part of the reason for that is because people just don't understand it. They don't know what it is. We're not exposing the people to what we do and how we do it and why we do it, the value that it brings. You know, if you ask children, kids today if they're in school, what do they want to be? You know, it's a nurse, it's a firefighter, it's a police officer, it's whatever it is, but just because they know that, it's right there in front of them every day. And we own a responsibility, the obligation to figure out ways to try to get that knowledge and that experience and that education out there. And we need to figure out how to do it. Some of us have, tried to figure out ways to do that by going to high schools and presenting or guidance counselors, but we need to talk about that. And I'm hoping that's one of the things that will, be discussed at the AMI meeting in the meeting symposium that's there. I want to talk about relocation. So relocation for me is a real, I think that's a real issue. I showed you earlier 30 some odd schools, if you will, around the country. And while they are absolutely awesome schools, none of them are bad schools, I'll use Barbara Christie, for example, up at IUPUI, Indiana, right? So great school, awesome school, but a lot of times in the healthcare profession, whether you want to be a nurse or a doctor or whatever, a lot of times your passion, your drive, the reason why you get into healthcare is because you want to make a difference in your community, the place where you grew up, the place that you're attached to. So if there's not a school in your area or community, then it's not often that you're willing to go travel to go to school to get this education. But I'll compound that, because even if for some reason you do get the education, likely you're going to want to live in the area that you grew up in, that you want to be attached to. And so the schools aren't necessarily where the hospitals are in the geographic regions that you're at. So I believe that a huge opportunity for us is to figure out ways to get more schools so that people will feel good about getting their education in the community that they want to be a part of, that they want to continue to grow and prosper and do that. So I think that's a huge challenge for us, and we need to figure out how to manage that. And lastly, that I'll share around the support, and this is a conversation that Barbara and I had recently, and I totally agree with her, and that is the point of, so support, right? If you look at other careers, if you will, let's say nursing or others, there are fractions that or other organizations that will actually fund and support and market and go out and try to advocate for their profession, such as nursing and things, because there's a need for them to sell their products or to support their products. And so there are other professions where there are marketing and all kinds of things that are going out to support that industry. And in our case, that's not the case. And in fact, the people that should be doing that, which would be the medical manufacturers, there's no incentive for them to do that, because quite candidly, they want the people to come out of schools and work for them and support them. All of us as in-house or as third party or as ISOs, in largely, it's not 100%, but in large capacity, we're competitors. And so there's not this inherent or this group that's out there that's going to come to the table and provide support or funding or any other kind of thing. So these to me are the rolled up support or mechanism that we're challenges that we have to deal with, and we have to figure out how to get through those. Here's another thing I think which is a challenge for us, and I'm not looking to create waves or cause problems within any of the organizations that you're working in as you're listening, but in fact, if you look at this chart, what it says to me, and I may not be 100% accurate, is that over 40 years, salaries haven't changed a whole lot. You see a spike here and there, but overall, the salaries haven't changed. They've grown as the world has grown, as you've gotten increases with the world, but as a profession, as we've gone from being repair technicians to healthcare technology management, we haven't done anything in recognition and contribution around making sure we recognize and reward our people anywhere, which would be saying that we're trying to do that. And so to me, this slide speaks to that, and it's another area of challenge that we need to be thinking about and figuring out how to manage. So these next couple of slides I'm going to go through quick. They're not anything special, but they're just some commentaries from different articles and things that I've written or been part of that I just want to share with you guys, right? So it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all absolutely bad. I mean, as this one indicates, the fact is that we are getting older and, that people are retiring, but in fact, that means that's awesome from a perspective of opportunity. We just have to get people to make sure that they're aware of it and bring it to their attention so that they can get involved and that they do have the opportunity to be, trained and educated, if you will. Here's another one. And last, right? So I guess the piece here, as I said, is, it's really around, there's going to be a 6% increase in demand. We got people leaving. We got people retiring. Schools are closing. I realize I keep hashing it, but I can't say it enough. I mean, we've got to figure out as an industry how we can do this, because quite frankly, those of us on the call, we're getting to that age where we're going to need the health care. We have family members who are going to need the health care. We need people to make sure the medical equipment is working the way it was intended and designed. Somebody's got to help us do that. And while technology has changed dramatically, that what we used to do from a true preventive maintenance inspection, where equipment today can self-diagnose and tell us what's wrong, the fact of the matter is that we still bring a huge value to the industry, whether it's to consult with the clinicians and the physicians to help them understand how to use this technology better, because the change of pace in the way it's changing and the way it's going, somebody's got to help them stay aligned and encouraged by that and help them know how to use it, or whether it truly is a repair and maintenance. Regardless of what it is, although the way we do our business has changed, the business itself hasn't changed. That is to maintain and manage medical equipment. And again, that's the value that we bring and that you all do as an industry. Okay, so in the effort to try to help everybody understand, and again, I apologize if I'm boring people or if it's stuff that they already know, but this slide here to me talks a little bit about what are some of the avenues as you're having conversations with your family members, your friends' kids, you know, knowing what the avenues are and what they mean from each avenue, I think is hugely valuable. So if you look at this, you know, the ideal situation is we get kids out of school. And from that, they can go into the IT-related things. So they can get some computer skills, which is what most kids want today. But they can do it in a healthcare slant. As we know, there isn't a single medical device today that doesn't come out and is not integrated into the IT space. So they can get into IT and still have a healthcare, you know, perspective and bring it to them. They can get into the associate's degree. The AAS gives them a vehicle by which they can come in. They know they want to work with their hands. They always want to work with their hands. They just want to maintain in medical equipment or be involved with medical equipment, so they can go down that venue. Taking that venue really pretty much says, this is the direction I want to be. You can, so let me go over here. If you go to just the AS, the engineering technology field, that's more towards, yes, you can work with your hands, but you're really starting to gear up towards working towards a bachelor's degree. And so your curriculum between those two programs is really more technical focused or more academia and more management. So it's something that you want to be able to make sure that you break out, because when they make the decision to go to the school, you don't want them to go down a path only to find out they wish they had gone down the other. So taking a few minutes and understanding that is hugely valuable in my mind. And then the last one is truly just going to the engineering. It's working towards, eventually you want to get into the research and development and design. Now, if you look to the right, first of all, you can be with the AAS, and you can work towards, you probably have to take a few courses to get up to wherever you need to be for the minimum requirements, but you can get into a bachelor's from there. But the other ones gear you that way. But in any event, once you get the bachelor's, then the next option is you can get your master's degree in clinical engineering, which is really a whole different world. It's an awesome experience. It's taking it to the next level, and one of the best programs in the country is run by Frank Painter out of UConn. Great program. And I would encourage anybody that has the appetite to go to that much school to go down that road. And it really does take the opportunities. If you get to that level, your doors are open beyond even your wildest imaginations. So I leave that with you for consideration and thought so that you can think about that and help communicate that information. I encourage you, if you have questions, to reach out to one of those organizations and ask for some questions and have them give you some input and some support around how you would communicate this information. I'm going to share with you guys real quickly my perspective. These are things that for those of you that may know me, I've been saying these 5 things for better than 25 years. I believe if you want to be successful in this industry, and you can probably apply these to multiple industries, but it's around, you want to have respect for what you know and you don't know, and you need to know who has that knowledge. You need to respect that knowledge. You need to go get that knowledge. And you need to have the knowledge to know where you need to have the respect. Those two are absolutely crucial. You can look awesome. You can present yourself as a phenomenally attractive, wonderful person that just comes off as just being polished. But if you can't communicate verbally or in written form the way you need to, then your presentation will be nulled. You can be an awesome communicator, but you can come across from your presentation perspective as not having credibility, and you won't be successful. Those 4 things in my mind are absolutely crucial, and the higher you go in this profession, the more important it is that you have a higher level associated with each one of these 4 items. The last one is the one that I feel is the one that will differentiate you from the competitor that's alongside of you as you apply for a job. Flexibility, in my mind, really equates to when you're first starting out, you're willing to work a little overtime, and you're willing to, on your time, if you have to, go learn something that you're not necessarily responsible for or requested to do, but you're trying to grow yourself, make yourself better. Flexibility in the middle of your career is around being willing to work overtime and maybe even leave the home once in a while to go off and support the organization that you're working with to go do what you got to do. And lastly, the biggest sacrifice is flexibility. Is if you really want to get ahead in your career, you got to be maybe willing to move your family, go to that next job, get that 10 or 15% increase, and it's going to help you in the long run. But that's something that, as we talked about earlier, isn't necessarily what everybody subscribes to, but it is what will get you progressively forward a lot faster, and it will take away some of the competition you have because a lot of people aren't willing to do it. These 5 things to me are paramount, and again, the higher up the chain you go, the more you have to have depth in every one of these categories. This slide is just a lot of places where you can go to get more information, a lot of great stuff around what we've been talking about, just a good resource tool to be able to support what we're trying to talk about and what we're trying to do. So just to show you that I'm not just about doing a presentation, this slide is actually proof that I try to do what I say I do. I got a brother, 2 cousins, a nephew, and a stepdaughter who I believe is on the call. All people that I've gotten in this industry, and I think they are extremely successful. They've been great contributors to the profession. Very cool stuff. And I've also had the pleasure and an awesome opportunity to be able to bring a lot of people that either straight from high school or have associate's degrees that are unrelated fields and gotten them to be very successful. And it's all around taking the 5 things I talked about before and working with people and helping them grow. So it's just a great, great field. So I want to give special recognition and thanks and praise for this presentation, the MD Publishing Group, Amy, and in particular Barbara Christie. I would encourage you all to reach out to her if it's an interest that you have in wanting to go to school. Okay, I got a quick ask as we start to wrap up. I would appreciate it if you would go learn about your geography. Go find out what schools are in your area. Find out what they offer for classes. Find out where your healthcare facilities are. Find out what their needs are. Find out how you can start to marry students with those opportunities. Go educate. Let people know what we do, why we do it, how we do it, what the value of it is. Promote this industry. We have got to get people to come in here. I can tell you right off the bat, we're going to be 5,000 to 6,000 people short in the next 5 to 10 years. That's huge. It's going to make it harder on the rest of us to figure out how to get this job done. I ask you guys to get involved. Thank you for your time.
Dave, this is Jamie. Thank you so much for that presentation. You gave us lots of great tips and, of course, some pertinent information that we need to think about as an industry. I've had several questions come in during your presentation, so let's see how many we can get through, being mindful of our 60-minute mark. Lots of attendees wanted a little follow-up on some of the numbers you provided. One attendee asked, and I'll let this question speak for the majority of them, does graduates per year mean the military biomeds also?
No, it's a great point. And quite candidly, the military graduates are some of the best candidates in our industry, so that's phenomenal. Thank you.
Next question is, what are we going to do to generate awareness of careers that are available in our industry?
So I would answer that question this way, and everybody please remember this is Dave Francoeur's opinion, and that doesn't always mean I have the end of the answers, but from my perspective, I think it's around us starting to get our arms around the HTM nomenclature. It's around all of us coming up with, again, the thing that's concerning for me is if I asked 100 people, what do we do in this profession, and they're all in it, I'd probably get 101 different definitions. And so I think it's important that we all land on some sort of a definition standard and that we start to promote, understand it, promote it, and market it the way we need to be, and hopefully maybe even be able to go back to within our community, and not necessarily the people on this call, but people on this call being a voice to go back to different factions and figure out how we can open up more schools and try to make them more spread out across the country so that more people can take advantage of it and get them into the profession.
Great. Here's one that I really like. Do people with a certificate in biomed find jobs, or more employers looking for AAS degree people?
So I have to be honest with you, Jim, I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but let me try to answer. So when I hear the word certificate, I don't know exactly what they're referring to, but the deal is this. You can, depending on where you're trying to get a job, depending on the appetite associated with where you're trying to be employed, virtually anyone can get into this industry. What it takes is, depending on the amount of education and experience you have related to this industry, means it's a relationship to how much time and energy you need to spend with the person to get them up to speed. For instance, as I said, I've had numerous people that I've brought straight out of high school, but we spend 2 years, 3 years working where they never leave somebody else's side, and they're getting hands-on, on-the-job training and experience. Technically and hopefully, individuals that come out with an associate's degree, regardless of what an AAS or AS is, they come out with some very basic skills, and so they have a lot of the fundamentals, and we just need to teach them some of the technical aspects of the particular facility that they're in. So I don't care where you come into this industry, no matter what your academic experience is, there are technical aspects that you will never learn in the college, and so it's all around your employer and their engagement in your development plan as to exactly how fast you're growing and what areas you grow and how successful you're going to be in this industry. So I don't know if I answered the question, but that's my response.
Love it. That was great. I have another attendee who just wants a little clarification on something you mentioned. What was the name associated with the master's program that you mentioned?
Clinical engineering, and it's UConn, University of Connecticut in Connecticut.
Great. Here's a question that I have a feeling you're going to like. Do you
By the
feel
way, Vanderbilt,
that... Oh,
I was just going to say real quickly, Vanderbilt here in Nashville also has a master's degree in clinical engineering. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, you're good. Do you feel like some of the challenge with finding biomeds and education available has anything to do with the fluctuating regulatory requirements?
I would say the answer to that question immediately is no, only because it wasn't until recently that that came about. Now, second side of that answer is yes, it's absolutely going to impede us even further, and I apologize, I should have put that in the slide and talked about it. That's a great point. Yes, I do believe that the stuff that's going on from the federal government is going to absolutely have an impact on us, and it will be negative, because I believe with every fiber of my being that we will see some sort of regulation. We will see some sort of credentialing requirement of some sort, and yes, I do believe it's going to have an impact on us from a recruitment perspective. However, the flip side to that is that it may drive higher pay scales and better benefits, because in order to keep people in the industry. So there's a pro and con to everything, and again, remember, that's Dave Francoeur's opinion. Don't anybody take that as literal.
Next question is going to touch on the same topic a bit. Do you think wearing too many hats as a biomed by having to train in such a widespread field is affecting biomed's knowledge and skill level?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think I want to be careful how I answer that, because I think it also depends on the scope by which you have that responsibility, right? So if your scope is to just understand it enough so that you can make sure that in a clinical environment, you can make sure that the clinicians or the physicians are utilizing it properly, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, or that you can be overburdened. If you as an individual have the responsibility in a smaller institution or in a different environment where you need to know, lots of pieces of equipment, and you need to be able to maintain them 100%, then I would say that it would depend on the individual and the opportunity by which they have training and the resources that they have available to them in order to be able to support those devices properly. And at any time, I would encourage people that if they feel that they're putting themselves or others in jeopardy, that they should raise their hand and have that conversation to figure out what that looks like.
All right, given the declining availability of training and education in academia for BMETs, are there alternative resources that you could suggest?
So, as I said earlier, and I would say this again, so I don't know, there's an individual, the answer is yes, right? So I would say the answer is it's infinity, right? So anybody can get into this field. And what I would tell you is that the skill that's associated with this field is having a good personality, wanting to be somebody that wants to help individuals and make a difference. So if you're somewhat mechanically inclined, if you have a personality of wanting to have a helpful spirit, then it really shouldn't matter. You can come from the automotive industry. You could come from the IT world. You could come from a food service background, a housekeeping background. The fact of the matter is that what's imperative is that the person that you would be reporting to has to own your development plan and make sure that they work with you as an individual based on your skill set and where you want to go, and put together a progression that's appropriate for you and help you get from A to B safely, appropriately, and provide rewards and recognition opportunities so that you grow and you get excited about your development as you go forward. So the immediate answer to your question is, people come from any aspect of the industry to get into this. We may get into a little bit of a challenge if the federal government continues to do what they're doing, but for now, and there's people that don't necessarily agree with my philosophy, but I believe the right person with the right attitude and a little bit of mechanical skills and wanting to work around people and be comfortable with people can absolutely be successful in this industry.
All right, Dave, I think we have time for one more question, though. I do want to let the attendees know there's still several questions that are in queue. When we wrap up today, I'm going to send all of these questions over to Dave and the Sodexo team. I know they're going to follow up with you offline to give you ideas, tips, and suggestions, and of course the answers that you're looking for. But for today, to be mindful of our 60 minutes, the last question will be, I have wanted to start a biomedical association in my area for some time. However, is there a playbook to go by to help start one?
Awesome question. Awesome question. And the answer is absolutely. So AAMI actually has a literal playbook that tells you exactly what you should do to start a regional organization. And it literally talks about every aspect of it, around creating your executive team, around how to go about recruiting people to be part of it, around what your meeting should consist of. It talks about how to structure a tax ID, all the things that you need to do. It's absolutely 100% inclusive. The second thing I would say is there's an individual in this country that is extremely good at it and has done it numerous times, and I would encourage you to get in touch with Pat Lynch. And if you don't have his contact information, let me know. I'll get it for you. But he is very willing and loves to help people set up local and regional biomed societies.
Dave, thank you so much. Thank you again for the presentation, and a big thank you to Sodexo Clinical Technology Management. Again, you can learn more about this company by visiting their website, sodexoctm.com. One lucky attendee will win lunch for their whole department. Details are included in the post-webinar survey, which is going to appear shortly on your screen. You do need to complete the survey to receive the certificate, but if the survey does not launch, please email us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Another webinar Wednesday is up next week. We're going weekly through the summer. You can see a complete list of upcoming webinars by visiting onetechnation.com/webinars. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We'll see you back here next week.
Happy HTM week.